All right.
This meeting is being recorded.
That's weird. Why does it tell you twice? I don't know. Anyway, you want to make sure, guys, that if you do say may be assigned but not be released from liability, always tell the listing agent the reason we selected this is because they're going to put it in a family trust or an LLC. Nobody knows what this means, and they all get freaked out by it. So you have to make sure you're going to know more than most agents who've been doing this for 20 years. Trust me. They don't know what this means. They've been told just to check may assign and not be released from the contract. And you're going to ask them why, and they're going to say, that's what I was told. Okay. So you understand that you can't check this and then change it to the name of the LLC or the trust. This means that whatever name you wrote on that contract is the name you're closing with it, right? Everybody good with that? Now, if they say, I don't know what you mean, I'm just going to stay with it, then you can check that. You're fine. You're probably never going to check may assign and thereby be released because nobody's going to feel comfortable saying, I don't know, you might write the contract with me today, but I might close it with Melissa. Nobody's going to really feel good about that one, right? So you're probably never going to use that one. Everybody good with that?
Mm-hmm.
Good. Now, this is the big one we're covering today, and then we're going to hopefully get into finalizing the difference between as is and FAR bar, although I don't know how much opportunity you're going to get to use the FAR bar, which is a huge shame because it's the better contract. Oh, did I say that? Yes, I did. Okay. So this is very simple. If your buyer is paying cash, you check A. That means it's a cash deal, no contingency. Now, if your buyer says, listen, I'm going to pay cash, but I might also get a loan. I don't have to get a loan, but I might want to get a loan. I can close either way. You're going to want to check cash because a cash offer is a much stronger offer. And if they can close with or without the loan, you're going to want this because it doesn't say you can't get a loan, right? It just says this contract isn't contingent on it. Meaning, if for whatever reason they can't get that loan, they're still going to close. They're just going to close cash. Does that make sense?
Mm-hmm.
So if you have a borrower who says, okay, I want to go ahead and go with that one, but they cannot close if they don't get the financing, you need to really let them know. If you choose this one, you're going to lose your deposit. Absolutely. Because if you cannot close, you have no financing contingency, right? That's what this says. So everybody clear the difference here?
Yep.
Okay. And I'm saying that because many listing agents today are saying, well, we want you to waive your financing contingency. Caution your buyer. I know they're all desperate trying to get homes, but unless they really can close without it, don't do that, right? Otherwise, unless they're really prepared to walk away from the money they put down. But just if you don't explain this very carefully, guess who they're going to go after for the money?
You.
That's right. It's going to be you. And you guys have errors and omissions, but I don't know. I wouldn't want to chance it with that, right? So, and errors and omissions, remember, is that your insurance policy to help you with lawsuits. But, let's not try it. Let's not even challenge that, right? So, this is the one, if somebody has financing, you're going to want to check. B. And again, I'm all about filling in every blank, right? Unless it doesn't pertain to your contract. So this contract is contingent upon if left blank 30 days. Now, if it's FHA, am I going to tell you, or VA, am I going to tell you to leave that 30 days?
No.
Right? We're going to put in probably 45 days there. But whoever it is, I'm going to tell you to call the lender. It is your job to speak to that lender and make sure, A, that your buyer truly is qualified, number one. B, that your buyer understands a couple things, like that they're on top of getting their information in, that they're getting all their documents into the lender, that they're really understanding how much the payments are going to be, right? You have to make sure that you're part of that process. Don't just assume the buyer's going to do it. And I'm going to explain to you a little bit further in depth why, because there's a part of the contract here, you see down here, it's called good faith and diligent effort. If the buyer's failure to use good faith and diligent effort happens during this loan approval period, it's considered default. If they don't do that, they lose their deposit. So what does that mean? That means I'm the listing agent. Karen, you're the buyer's agent. And I keep calling you and I'm saying, hey, Karen, how's it going? You're like, oh, it's good. It's good. Everything's good. And I call the lender up and I say, well, how's it going? Well, I haven't gotten the documents yet. Okay. Well, I haven't gotten the documents yet. Then I get a denial, right? Within the loan approval period that says they're not approved for financing. But I know they're not approved because they didn't get the documents in time. They lost their deposit. It didn't matter that they had a financing contingency. They didn't use good faith and diligent effort to get the documents in time. They lost their deposit. So it's your job as the buyer's agent to help them with that. More importantly, to help them understand that. You can't go to their home, right, and get the documents, but you can help them understand if they want their deposit back, that they have to do those things and they have to do them in a timely manner when they're asked. Does that make sense?
Yep, it does.
That's pretty new, right? That was that's a fun one. That was started 2 years ago. Now, also, you got to put here, you need to know from that lender what kind of loan they're getting. Is it a conventional, FHA, VA? What could be other? Maybe USDA, right? You guys have it up by you. Maybe it's a portfolio loan they're getting, right? What kind of loan is it? You got to select and only one. If you put FHA or conventional, I'm going to kick that back as a listing agent. I'm going to be like, wait a minute. Which one is it? Because one offer is going to be stronger than another one. If you're an FHA versus a conventional, which one do you guys think would be a stronger offer? Especially in today's
I think conventional stronger.
Heck yeah. That says it's a probably more qualified buyer, right? Who goes FHA? Somebody dude who has probably a lower credit score, right? Less deposit. It's a more marginal buyer. So I'm going to look a little differently on this particular offer if it's an FHA than I would if on a conventional, right? So if you came in and it was a conventional and then you tried to change, hey, Michael, you tried to change the loan and make it an FHA, do you think me representing the seller is going to be like, oh, no problem. We'll now make it contingent on an FHA? Oh, no. We're not. We didn't agree to that. My seller would not have accepted this offer if it was FHA, right? So you've got to be very clear here on what kind of loan this is. Is everybody good with that? And it has to match the loan approval that you're sending. And by the way, the listing agent, if they're any good at all, are calling that lender and verifying that too. Don't you think that Tasha doesn't call because she calls everyone? We want to know, have you looked at the tax returns? Have you actually verified their income? We want to know not just what kind of loan it is, but how much work have you done to find out how qualified this buyer is. We're digging when we call as listing agents because we don't want our seller pulling their home off the market for this particular offer over this one when it wasn't really that qualified to begin with, right? Because not every loan approval even is as good as the other one. You know what I mean? We don't necessarily know how much work that particular mortgage broker has done on one file versus another, right? So that's why listing agents are calling too. So as a buyer's agent, you better have called already and know that. You know what I mean?
Here's a question for you. How are VA loans looked at?
Well, it depends on the knowledge of the agent. So unfortunately, the truth is a lot of times poorly, and that's just a not very educated agent. And also it depends on the price point, okay? So the reality is a VA loan is a little more difficult to get through inspection, right?
Yes,
because they're very, very particular to make sure that, especially for mold, oh my God, if you have any problem with the WDO, oh, that is not going to pass in an inspection situation with a VA. They need to make sure that our military men and women are taken care of and can move into that home. So the inspection process is much harder on a VA. But so if you're in a low 200 price point with a VA, you might be worried about your home passing that inspection if it's like an older home, you know what I mean? That might be difficult. But if you have a $1.2 million property, I'm expecting that to be in pretty decent shape. I would love a VA all day long because VAs go up more than that. We've had VAs higher than that. That doesn't mean it's not a qualified buyer. As a matter of fact, most VAs are extremely qualified, especially at that price point. These people served our country. That's why they have the ability to have that type of loan. I think they're wonderful, right? And I'm not worried about an inspection at that kind of price point because I'm expecting the home to do pretty darn well, right? So the other great thing is in the appraisal with the VA, it says that in the addenda that serviceman or woman, they have the opportunity and the right, if the home doesn't appraise, to continue with that loan and bring the money to the table. Unlike FHA, if a home does not appraise, they can't get that loan. It's over. And that appraisal will stick with that home for 6 months. Not like a VA, where that VA applicant has that right to go ahead and bring more money. And a lot of times they do because they're coming to the table with 0%, 100% financing, right? So a lot of times they might say, hey, we'll make up the difference. That's fine. So I like a VA, absolutely, if it's the right property for a VA loan, right?
Gotcha.
If that home is, not the greatest shape, definitely something to do with mold or, bad roof, I'm not taking a VA in that home, right? Because that's never going to pass.
Right.
Right. FHA too, they're tough also. Not as tough in inspection as VA, but they're tough.
Okay.
Mostly because they're putting no money in it, right? So they know that they're going to get them back. So they want to make sure they can resell that thing, right? So that's really why the FHA are tough. But yeah. So you want to select one of those, right? Then you want to select if it's fixed, adjustable, or fixed or adjustable, which is never, just pick one, right? Obviously. Here's an important one. With an interest rate not to exceed. Don't see, it says if left blank, the prevailing rate based upon the buyer's creditworthiness. You know what I see people writing in here? Prevailing. Again, I beg to ask why. It says prevailing here, and it's a percentage. Why you're writing anything in there, I have no freaking clue, but it drives me insane. Okay, you don't want to leave this blank, and I'm going to tell you a story as to why. In my international brokerage, we had represented a woman who seemed very, very qualified. Years ago, she had a bankruptcy, and in her bankruptcy, there was a foreclosure. Well, as many things had happened in bankruptcy foreclosure combinations, for some bizarre reason, they didn't close out the foreclosure properly, and it didn't get closed out at the time of the bankruptcy, which was supposed to. We didn't find that out for some crazy reason until much later, about, I don't know, a couple weeks in, right? A week or two in. So it turned out, thank God it was during the financing, obviously, but it turned out that it affected her creditworthiness when they found out the foreclosure was still within the 7-year period. What? We had written in here 6.25 because the interest rates were about, I don't know, I usually go a half a point higher, so it's probably 5.75 or something. But that's usually what I do. I usually give a little wiggle room because as a listing agent, I know that things are going to change. And so if I put in 5.25 or 5.75, obviously that's crazy. Why would I accept that? That means I can make it. This is a contingency, right? So if it goes up at all, they already have a bad way out. So why would I accept that? So you want to give a little wiggle room to allow for rates to change. But because I put that in there, she went up. She was still given the loan, but it was 12%. Clearly, she didn't want the loan. She was still qualified for the home, but she was able to get out during the financing contingency because she was approved at 12% versus 6.25. So that's why you want to cap your buyer's risk rate here. Does that make sense? Now, I can't say that that's a normal situation, but that happens. So you always want to put, and I would say just to ask the lender what is, because they don't always write on the loan approval what they're approved at, but just put something about, like I said, half a point higher than we're at. Like today's what? Is it 3.25 still? I think it's like 3.25 right now. So maybe I put 3.5, 3.75, something like that. Make sense?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Now for a term of 30 years, fill it in. They're probably not going to get a 15-year, right? But I put 30 years in there because I hate blanks. The other reason you don't want to leave blanks is we get so used to, not me, but many people get so used to seeing if left blank. There are some things on here that do not say if left blank. And then we're sitting here in a contract going, okay, now what does this mean? We don't know. Nobody made an election. And what's the whole point of the contract, right? Clarity. So we all know what's supposed to happen, but we don't because we left things blank. So just get in the habit of filling everything in. Okay, but here's the interesting thing. Now it says right here, this is new. The buyer's mortgage broker or lender having appraised or received an appraisal or an alternate valuation of the property satisfactory to the lender or required by the lender, which is sufficient to meet the terms required by the lender. So that means all of these things, this appraisal now must happen within this 30-day or 45-day, whatever you wrote in here, period. That was not the way before. Beforehand, you'd have your financing contingency, but oftentimes that appraisal didn't happen until after that. It used to be you're approved contingent upon a good appraisal. What the heck? What a mess. That's why they changed the contracts back in October. So this is a big thing. So this, a lot of agents do not understand this. And you guys have to know this because you're going to see where agents are saying, listing agents, well, I want your buyer to waive the appraisal contingency. Hello? How do you waive the appraisal contingency? It's included in your financing contingency now. See, they don't understand there's a new contract. They don't understand what the new contract change is. So if you say buyer and seller agree, buyer will waive the appraisal contingency, doesn't mean the lender will, right? So you could write that, but it means nothing. It's stupid because the lender can come back and say, well, the buyer is not qualified or the home is, they are not given the loan. Right? It's retarded because it's part of this loan approval now. The home must be, they must have an appraisal or some kind of an appraisal, which is sufficient to meet the terms of the loan. It's part of the approval process. So how can you waive that if you're getting financing? You can't, right? I know. We get this all the time. And then they want you to write in, oh, but if it doesn't appraise, the buyer will bring extra money to. That's all stupid too, because you can say, oh, sure, if it doesn't appraise, my buyer will bring $20,000 up to the purchase price, yada, yada. But then the lender can say, well, no, because that throws off the debt to income ratio and then they're no longer qualified. So they still issue them a denial and they still get out in the financing contingency. So what does all that mean? Nothing. It wasn't even worth the paper they wrote it on. So this is the problem. Realtors like to play attorney. They're not attorneys. They don't understand what they're doing. They're making stuff up and none of it means anything. So when you get that, you're going to call me and say, Carrie, what do I do? I'm going to tell you, you can write whatever you want, but at the end of the day, it's not going to matter because right here in this contract, it's going to tell you that the financing, this is the question you need to write down. I want you both to write this down. You need to talk to the lender. This is incredibly important. And you need to ask the lender, at what price does the home need to appraise at for you to deny the loan? That's the real answer. I'm so sorry. I do have to grab this real quickly. Hey, honey, I'm just on a Zoom. Did you get, that's okay. Yeah, because it's delayed. And I don't know how long. I don't know, but there was a big thing. It was overbooked and all that. So don't worry. So I'll pick them up. Okay? That's okay. Love you. Bye. Sorry, my son is flying in and his flight was late. Anyway, I'm sorry. So that is the question you need to know. And if I'm on the list side, that's the question I'm going to call and ask the lender too. At what price does the home need to appraise for you to deny the loan? Because all the other things are irrelevant. Does that make sense?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So if you write in, the buyer's willing to pay $20,000 up to the purchase price, blah, 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 blah. And if the home appraises, let's say the home is 400, and then they say, well, if it doesn't appraise for 390, we're going to deny the loan. And you write that and the home comes in at 380. Well, guess what? It doesn't matter. They're denying the loan anyway. So you could write that up to $20,000, which is what 380 would equate to, right? Because the home purchase price is 400. It's all nonsense anyway. They're going to deny the loan. So it's all kind of ridiculous. Okay. Then you have that the buyer shall make financing within, I'd fill in 5 days. They've already done it, guys, because you're not taking anybody out who has not put in, does not even have a loan approval, right? So of course they've already made an application. But here's it's where it says they have to use good faith and diligent effort. Now this is new, not just to get the loan, but also to meet the appraisal terms. So what does that mean? So this is the other problem. What people were doing was they were waiting to order the appraisal until after inspection to save the buyer money. In case the inspection's bad, right, we won't order the appraisal. You can't do that, because if you do that, there's no way you're going to have the appraisal information back within the 30 days for the loan approval. See? So this is now, you have to make sure that they pay for the appraisal right away. Even if the home doesn't have good inspection, you're too bad. You had to pay for the appraisal right away. Because if you don't pay for the appraisal now, you hold off, you get the inspection, and then it inspects, okay, you want to continue, but now, you need to get an extension to the financing period, and they say no. The seller says no. Because guess what? They're going to say no because they probably have a backup offer, maybe 4, right? And probably for more money too, by the way. And so now, what are you going to do? Your buyer has no choice. They're going to either get denied, right? So they get the denial from the financing. But they find out the reason they're denied is because the appraisal won't come back in time. They're going to ask the lender, when did they order the appraisal? Well, they didn't pay for it until here. Oh, I'm sorry, that's not diligent effort. The buyer just lost their deposit. Crazy stuff is happening. So you have to make sure that you are recommending to the buyer, you must pay for the appraisal up front. Otherwise, you can be found in default because you didn't use diligent effort because you weren't able to get the appraisal in the 30-day period to see if you could get your financing contingency. Unless you want to write a really long financing contingency, but if you do that, guys, you're probably not going to get any offers approved. Right?
Yeah.
So this is, listen, if it was a buyer's market, you have a whole other thing here. It's a seller's market, a really strong seller's market. So you have to work within the constraints of what you can do, and your buyer's going to be on it. They need to order that appraisal right away. That's all they can do. Okay. So again, this is them saying that if they don't, see, it says it calls it right out. They have to keep everybody a diligent effort. So they have to turn all timely furnishing all documents and information required by the buyer's mortgage broker and lender, and paying for the appraisal and other fees in connection with the buyer's application for financing. They have to pay for it right on time. Otherwise, it's not using diligent effort. It's written into the contract. This is new. They've added that because of the whole situation we're having with appraisals. And because the appraisals are so delayed, right? So they know you have to order it right in the beginning. Now this I love. So buyer shall keep, upon written request, seller and broker fully informed about the status of their loan application processing appraisal. I love that. As a listing agent, sorry. Loan approval and any property related conditions of the loan approval. The buyer authorizes the mortgage broker, lender, and closing agent to discuss such status, progress, and release preliminary and finally executed documents, disclosures, and settlements. That means that lender has to tell the listing agent everything they ask. So as a buyer's agent, we don't like that so much. But as a listing agent, I love that. So when we call and we say, hey, what's going on? Did they, give you this information, or did you already get that? And they say, oh, I'm sorry, I can't tell you that. We just highlight that section, send it on back, and we say, well, no, great news. Your buyer already gave the authority for you to do that. So what is that information? This is how we know if they're using diligent effort, which is why you have to help your buyer understand the importance of staying on time and up to date. And that's why you have to play an active role in that. Because if we expect the buyers to do that on their own, we're setting them up for failure, guys. How many of you know that, especially first-time home buyers? Oh, they have no clue. No clue. And how many lenders, mortgage brokers are no help with that, right? Because they're in the middle of how many other files? And they're not keeping track of that, right? So we have to be the advocates for our customers, unfortunately. In New York, New Jersey, and so many other areas where single agents, all they do is they find a home and then they pass everything off to the attorneys and they're out. That is not Florida. We work a lot here. So we're like their moms, their counselors. for like everything. So you got to make sure that you're on top of them with that. And you're notifying them, guys, your deposit is on the line here. If you don't do this, you can lose your deposit. Okay, everybody good with that? I mean, we're not trying to scare them, but that's what they're signing.
It's the reality of it.
It is. And what we don't want them to come back to us and say, you didn't tell us that.
Exactly.
Because don't think that they won't, they do. And so, and the sad thing is a lot of agents don't tell them. They don't know, right? And so they don't read. You think, how many buyers do you think actually reads this contract?
I know one. My husband did.
That's excellent. He's probably one of the very few. I read everything when we signed, but a lot of people don't. They don't read anything. They just sign, sign, sign. So they have no idea. And do you think their agent actually goes through with them? No, most agents just say, go sign it. They don't go through it. So you have to go through it with them. You have to explain it to them. And you have to hit the most important things about what they need to do, right? Now, here's an important thing too. And this is totally on you guys. I know it's not fair, but it is what it is. So once they receive the loan approval or they don't, you must notify in writing the seller of such. So that means you have 30 days. Within that 30-day period, you must put in writing to the seller or the listing agent, right? That's fine, whether or not they have received loan approval. Now, if you tell them, like, for example, meeting an agent today, the stupid lender, what a moron this guy is, he sent an email to the buyer, to her, my agent, and then to the freaking listing agent. We are 4 or 5 days out. This closing is Tuesday, right? They sent it today. We have loan approval. You know what he did? He waived the financing contingency. The financing contingency is now closed. We don't have documents, which means what? It could be loan approval with conditions. We don't know. We haven't seen it. If those conditions do not get met, and he actually at the end of the day, which trust me, I have seen this many times, ends up not getting that loan, he can no longer cancel and get his money back because this idiot just closed his financing contingency because the listing agent got back and said, did I just read that email correct? You just closed that financing contingency for your buyer? Now, what are we supposed to respond with that? No, you didn't read it correct. I mean, there's no other way you can go with that. That's what that idiot just did. We did not bring that buyer, that lender in. We told the buyer he shouldn't have brought that guy in, but we can't control our buyers, right? Because the buyers have their own mind. This is the kind of thing you need to be very, very careful of. I had another instance where a buyer's agent, now this can't happen anymore because another change that they just made is written disclosure now must be email. Text no longer suffices. Text used to, it no longer does. So if you're going to give written notification, it has to be an email. You can also send it snail mail, which makes absolutely no sense, or drop it off personally. Are you kidding me? These things are retarded. So you have to send an email. You can text and say, I sent you an email, but the only thing that counts for written notification is actually something that you send. Okay, it's no longer a text. But back in the day when it was a text, we had an agent who did this. He said, yeah, we're all good to go. Good to go with what? Loan approval. You have loan approval. He sent that text message. And then 4 days later, asked for an extension for financing contingency for 30 days. And I was like, excuse me, what are you talking about? You just told me you had loan approval. Well, had a couple snafus. I said, well, the seller's not going to give you an extension. And then he wanted his money back. I said, you already closed financing contingency, so your $10,000 is already gone. He didn't even know what he had done, that buyer's agent. You have to be so careful about how you're communicating and when you're communicating, right? But here's another thing. Let's say you didn't communicate it. So we're going to use another example. I'm a listing agent. I'll be the mean guy. Melissa, no, let's make it Michael. Michael is representing the buyer. And our closing day is supposed to be the 5th, right? And our loan approval period was the 3rd. And here we are the 1st. And I'm like, hey, Michael, how's it going? Oh, it's good. We're on target. Everything's good. And here we are the 2nd. Hey, Michael, how's it going? Good, 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 good. Here we are the 3rd. Crickets. Nothing. The 4th. Hey, Michael, how's it going? We need an extension. what? Yeah. Yeah, I had a little snafu. We need like a week extension. Michael, I told you the seller is not going to give an extension. So what happens? First of all, if we don't close on the 5th, do the buyers lose their money?
Yes.
Yeah,
Yeah,
because he kept saying everything was good. Everything was good. He didn't tell you things were bumpy along the way.
yeah. So what happened was the loan approval period passed. So their financing contingency closed. They're now assumed to close cash. They don't close. They didn't get an extension. They lose their money. Yep. But here's the worst thing. So instead, here we are on the 4th. You know what he got? He didn't even respond. On the 3rd, I didn't hear from him. So the 4th, instead, what Michael gets, guess what? They did get loan approval, but he didn't tell me. I didn't hear anything. Michael just forgot. He was busy. He had stuff going on that day. Forgot to tell me. And in the 4th, he received a release and cancellation from my seller. Can that happen?
Yeah.
It sure can, because he had to notify us within writing, because as it tells you right down here, if he doesn't, my seller may elect to terminate this contract by delivering written notice within 3 days after the expiration of the loan approval. So since the loan approval expiration was the 3rd, I had the 4th, the 5th, and the 6th. Now we were closing the 5th, right? So now if that's the case, would the buyers get their money back, the deposit?
No.
What do you think, Melissa? You're on mute. You're still on mute.
No, because they didn't do what they were supposed to in that time.
Actually, they would get their money back because we canceled, and we have to assume they would close cash. So unless they missed the closing date, they would get their money back because we chose to cancel them. But why would we do that, right? Because we're just a day before closing. Well, I tell you why we do that. We had a better backup offer. Our backup, my seller was chomping at the bit to hope that thing didn't close. And he kept asking me, Carrie, how can we get out of this contract? Carrie, how can we get out of this contract? Guys, you know how many agents ask me that on a daily basis? Carrie, how can my seller get out of this contract? I get that question all the time. And oftentimes I tell them, all you can do is if the buyer's agent does not notify you by that loan approval period that they have received loan approval or not, they can say we haven't, but we're going to move forward. They can do that too. But if you've not received written notification by that day, your seller has 3 days to cancel. And if they cancel, they have to give the money back. But now that backup offer goes into first position, and now they can close with that amazing cash offer that's 50 grand higher. That is what is happening in this market.
Sounds like a familiar story.
It is a familiar story. I can't tell you how many agents, unfortunately, we've done this with. And it's not that the listing agent wants to do it, but the seller is like, how do I get out of this offer? Because 2 days later, I got this much better backup offer. So, and now what do you have? Buyers going, what in the heck just happened? My poor kids have nowhere to live. My house is in this moving truck and we're homeless. And now what are you doing with these poor buyers? They got nowhere to live. And guess what? There's no inventory to sell them.
You move in with Karen.
Yes,
Remember at the beginning you said you would do that?
That's right. They're all moving in with Karen because we got nowhere else to take them.
Oh, come on, more the merrier.
We're all going to remember that. So this is true, guys, and this is happening. And I'm going to tell you another thing, which is sad to say, but sellers right now are getting, everybody, but sellers in general are getting so disgustingly greedy right now. It is awful. I have a seller who had 70,000 above asking and is just unhappy. 70,000 in 5 days. He's like, was looking to get out. I mean, are you kidding me? Really? Mm-hmm.
Don't look a gift horse in the mouth.
Yeah, because his home is not going to praise for crap. I'm telling you, he was already overpriced. Yeah. Mm-hmm. So this is our market right now. And you just have to really know this contract, because if you forgot to send that email saying that you have received loan approval or not, right? Your buyers, because you say they didn't receive loan approval, but they're going to continue. You can do that. They just have to receive they have to receive an email stating whether or not they've received loan application, what they're, loan approval, and what they're going to do. If you don't, that seller can cancel the contract for 3 days. And they are. And this isn't new, and so people do know about it. So it's bad. Okay, so that's an important one. You understand that. And just so you know, if buyer fails to timely provide written notice, obviously there's only 2 ways a buyer is going to get their money back, right? If they have timely provided written notice. If it's having to do with property related conditions. So like if the reason that they're canceling is because, they needed to get a new roof, otherwise they couldn't get a mortgage, well then they'll get the money back. Or if the seller said that they were going to do something and then the seller defaulted because they didn't do it, those are the only 2 ways that the buyer would actually get their money back. If it doesn't appraise, it doesn't matter. Anything like that doesn't matter, because after the loan approval period, you're done. You have that loan approval period. That is the only thing. So in an as-is contract, you have the cancel for any reason clause, right?
Mhm.
Do you have to tell them why? Nope. Do you have to have an inspection? Nope. None of those reasons matter. You have 7, 10, whatever you write down you can have an inspection, you can have an inspection, it doesn't matter, but you can cancel for any reason. That's your first one. And then you have a financing contingency, right? And that is for your 30 days, 45 days, or whatever. But your buyer must use diligent effort. They must have everything done within that 30 days or whatever that window is. And you must provide written notification within that time frame whether or not they've received it. These are the most important things you understand. Okay, everybody good on that?
Yep.
Okay, so I want to show you here, because we are doing okay on time. I got 15 more minutes. I'm so proud of myself. Whew, I must have been talking fast. All right, this is the difference. This is where the 2 contracts have changed. So far, everything we covered was exactly the same. Come on, come on. Hold on. Come on, come back, come back. Okay, so here we are. Right underneath, cost paid by buyers, cost paid by sellers. Okay, so this is a residential contract, right? Right here, let me back it up a little bit. Okay, this is an as-is. Let me back it up a little. So they both have the same regular costs that are paid by buyer and seller, right? That's standard. The difference is, oh, that was really tiny. Come back. In a residential contract, what you have are these 3 little lines right here. This is the difference. In a residential contract, not an as-is, we are going to say right up front that you're going to have inspections if you so choose. You don't have to, but if you so choose to have a general warranty inspection, a wood destroying organisms inspection, and you're going to do an inspection of permits, open permits, right? If you're going to do that, and you find that something is wrong having to do with working condition, right, for general repair items and WDO, then we're going to ahead, before we even have this, determine a certain amount of money that the seller is already willing to pay to take care of these items. Isn't that awesome? We're pre-negotiating this stuff, and it can be a dollar amount or a percentage of the purchase price. Now, if I'm a listing agent, I'm going to have already talked to my seller and ask them, how much would you be willing to pay for general repairs? Your house is in great shape, but you might need this or that. Would you be willing to pay $2,500, $3,000? What is that number, right? We're going to have discussed that already, but this is negotiable, right? When you're in negotiations with the buyer and seller. But here's the beauty of this contract if you're a buyer's agent. Remember, agents in our industry are unfortunately many uneducated, and unfortunately many of them are used to not filling in blanks, right? Let's be honest. I do a lot of contract training and a lot of boards, and a lot of people don't know anything. Let's use that to our advantage. So if you are turning in this contract, leave it blank on purpose, with my permission, expressly, because what I want to do is, if left blank, you get 1.5% of the purchase price. So let's say if a home costs 400,000 there, right? 1.5% is $6,000. So if you left this blank and something came back on that general repair items, you already got for your buyer $6,000 that the seller has already agreed to pay for general repairs, $6,000 for WDO, and $6,000 for either open permits or if they needed to get permits. You did pretty good already for your buyer, didn't you?
Mm-hmm.
This is where this contract is really good for a buyer's agent, because this is where you don't have to go in an as-is contract. You're going out of contract and you're saying, I want all these things done. Had an agent today, listing agent came in and said, Carrie, is an as-is contract. And the buyer's agent sent me a whole long list of these things that they wanted done and the monies for these things. And they sent it in by the 2nd, March 2nd, and the inspection period ended on March 2nd. I couldn't get in touch with my seller. My seller had a lot of things going on, and honestly, the seller really probably doesn't want to do anything anyway. But it's now March 4th. What happens? Anybody know? Nothing. They're out of luck. The inspection period, cancel for any reason clause is over. I don't care if you sent a long laundry list of items you asked for $1 million. That's nice. Thanks for asking. Nothing was agreed upon. That inspection period has closed. Your buyers are expected to continue as is in the contract. And if you choose to cancel, you will lose your deposit. That is an as-is contract. And that's what happens. Now, if it were me and I was representing that, and I would have said, which, you know, I love those contracts, I would have told my agent to send 2 things if you're going to send it on the last day. Send that addenda and send a release and cancellation, and make sure you get one or the other back. Right? Unless the buyer is willing to move forward without anything being done. Because here you got a buyer's agent who thinks, and I heard this actually I heard a thing from Tasha. I don't remember who I heard from. They said that they had an agent who has been in the business for 20 years. Yeah, me too. You should have known better. Who said, oh, well, it's fine because I got my request in by the end of the period. You know what that means? Nothing. It means nothing. You didn't get anything agreed upon. And your inspection period, which is not an inspection period, is a cancel for any reason clause. It's over. You did nothing. Congratulations. You didn't represent your buyer at all. That's the problem with the as is. So if you're working with an as is, you got to make sure you get something definitively agreed upon before that window closes. You understand what I'm saying? If this is a residential contract, you have an inspection period for a time period. Let me get to that point. If it's moving, hold on. Let's see where it goes. It's moving, but I don't see it moving. Okay, is it moving? Is it not moving? I don't know. Let's see. Okay, 1031 like kind of exchange. Okay, we're riders, we're waivers. I think, oh yeah, we totally missed that part of the contract. That's special. All right, let's see. Let's get there. I'm doing pretty good on my time here. I'm pretty impressed with myself. All right, I hope my contract plays along. All right, here we go. Almost there, almost there. This page right here. Okay, so they have a section for each of the repairs, right? Each of the inspections. This is in the residential contract. So the buyer may have, if left blank 15 days, it says the same thing on the other one, to have an inspection, right? And if they forget to timely deliver written notice of this report to the seller within that, it's gone. This has closed this window. That wonderful $6,000 or whatever you negotiated in by filling that, leaving that blank or whatever, it's over. You missed it. So you have to make sure you send that report from the inspector into the agent within this 15 days, 7 days, whatever you're writing here, okay? But the great news is within this contract, you don't have to have everything agreed upon by that time period. Because what happens is the seller can then go get estimates and find out how much can be done within that $6,000 or whatever that amount is that you agreed upon, right? So that does carry on. That agent, if she was thinking of the residential contract, she was right. But she was using it as his contract, so she didn't know what the heck she was talking about. They're not the same. They were not created equal. So the other thing is, within this, it's all about working condition. So the important thing is, if you're using this contract, you have to use a good inspector. You can't use an inspector who puts stupid things on there like, speak to the owner, get further information. All that stuff is bogus and means nothing in this. It must say, must repair or replace, okay? Those are the key words that would trigger the seller to have to do something, right? And it has to be working condition. You know, fogged windows, missing roof tiles, shingles that need to be repaired or replaced. Those things have to be done. They have to be in working condition. But, you know, the roof must be free of leaks, water damage. The home cannot have any structural damage, right? These are all things that make sense. All the interior walls, doors, windows, foundations, the pool equipment, the non-lease major appliances, heating, cooling, mechanical, electrical, sprinklers, plumbing, all this main stuff has to be in working condition. But does it say that if the air conditioner is not working properly, you have to get a new one? No, not unless they say must replace, right? But they usually say must repair or replace. So that's a key thing. But then it goes into cosmetic, and you must understand what cosmetic are, because cosmetic things do not need to be repaired or replaced. So things like, and they go through what are cosmetic: pitted marcite, tears, worn spots, discoloration on floor colorings, wallpaper, window treatments. If I see more of these stupid things on these inspector reports, nail holes, scrapes, scratches, dents, chips, caulking. If there's one more picture from a stupid inspector about caulking, they take pictures of caulking everywhere. Caulking in ceilings, walls, flooring, tile, fixtures, or mirrors. Minor cracks in walls, floor tiles, windows, driveways, sidewalks, pool decks, garage and patio floors. Guys, this is Florida. It's called settling, and it's totally normal. These are not this is working condition. If you have a little crack in your tile, doesn't mean that the tile is not working. I'm sorry. Cracked roof tiles, curling or worn shingles, and this one, limited roof life. I hate that. The stupid inspectors. Well, there's limited roof life here. What the hell do they know? They're not roofers. Now, there is a true situation, though, when the insurance company will not give you insurance. And that will probably stop you from getting financing, so you'll be covered under the financing contingency, okay? So that has become a real issue here, which is another thing. But all of those things that I just talked about, those are cosmetic. And, you know, no one should be asking for those things. But in reality, in an as-is contract, that's the stupidity that they ask for all the time, which drives me insane. If I see one more picture of that stupid caulking, I tell you, I'm gonna pull my hair out. It drives me nuts. But the other thing, you know, wood destroying organisms, they say what that would be. But the most important thing is you have to use a licensed inspector, and a licensed inspector may not be licensed in WDO as well as regular. So you have to get a real licensed inspector, which is important, right? For your buyer, that they have that done. And then you have to submit the report, not the whole report, but the summary of it, and submit that to the agent within that 7, 10, whatever day you wrote. Once you get it in there, you don't have to come to an agreement. Then they're going to go and get the estimates on how much they can get done. And then you can negotiate. Let's say you had $6,000, but there's polybutylene piping that's going to cost $8,000. Well, now you can negotiate. The seller can say, listen, I'm only going to pay $6,000. Will you pay the other $2,000? Well, you can say, well, I'll pay one, you pay the other one. Or, you know, you can negotiate back and forth. Or maybe you can't come to terms. You can get out of the contract and get your money back. You still have the right to do that. But at least you had a starting point, right? That is the difference with this contract over the as-is. I want to show you the as-is contract because it's important you see the difference. This is the as-is. Let's go over there. Wonderful thing. It's not moving. Hello? Can we move? Okay, here we go. Title evidence. Come on. Is it buffering? Oh, now I'm at the end of the contract. That's fun. Come on, let's get to it. I might go over a few minutes over, guys. Sorry, I'm almost there. Oh, here it is. Here it is. Yeah, property inspection. Let's go over that. Property inspection and right to cancel. That's what this is. Buyer shall have, if left blank, 15 days. So again, whatever you write in there, within which to have such inspections performed as buyer shall desire. If buyer determines in buyer's sole discretion the property is unacceptable, buyer may terminate the contract by delivering written notice. That's it. Then they say, you know, you're both out of the contract, and if you did anything to the property, you have to return it to the property. That's it. That's all it is. You don't need to have an inspector. You don't need to tell us why. You don't have to give us the repairs, and then we have nothing about that, right? Why? It's an as-is contract. So when that person submitted her that whole list of laundry stuff, is there anything in there about that? It's not in the contract. But that's how agents use. They have mushed these two contracts together because they all think they're attorneys, and they're trying to use this weird kind of version of their own as an as-is. They're going completely out of contract by doing that. So if, like I said, it said, say, 10 days here. In her instance, it said like 5 days. So you just barely had enough time, because they wanted to do that, right? Why? Because they want the seller to accept the contract, right? That's the whole point. You want to get your offer accepted. So they quickly got in there, had an inspection. They give you this whole laundry list, and they didn't get a reply. So what's going to happen? Nothing. This thing ends. Right to inspect, right to cancel. You had a right to cancel. You didn't do it. Does it say you have a right to ask for all sorts of money and repairs? I didn't read that. Did you guys read that? No, it's not in there. Nothing in there. Well, one other thing you need to understand, that for permits, open permits, see, in the residential, it is the seller's responsibility. If there are open permits or permits that need to be done, it is the seller's responsibility to take care of that, and the seller's responsibility to pay for that, for whatever amount they agreed to pay up to. In an as-is contract, it's the buyer's responsibility. So if the buyer, if this, let's say you find out after your 7 days, let's say you were 7 days, and then you find out there's open permits, too bad. You're buying this sucker as is. If you want to get out, you can cancel and lose your deposit, but you can't do anything. You can't tell the seller, oh, I found open permit, you have to close that. No, this is an as-is contract. You are buying this house as is. You're out of luck. Unless you happen to write in and play attorney, which so many realtors love to do. And one of these days, Freck is going to start auditing these realtors, and they're going to go to realtor jail, and I'm going to laugh. But if you wrote in here, oh, this is weird. Why does it not have our stuff? Buyer and seller agree. Seller will pay for any necessary or needed open permits. Let's say you wrote something like that in there, right? Now, if you wrote something, this home is contingent upon the seller having all the, and good luck. Okay, you're acting like an attorney. Don't do that. But if you wrote something like that in there, you could put that on the buyer, but the seller. But let me ask you, does it say when you're going to have that done? No. You're going to say how much it's going to cost up to? No. You're going to say when they have to have those things paid for by? No. See, this is the problem. That's how agents write that. Oh, I could pay for it maybe in 2032. You didn't say when it had to be paid for by, did you? No. So you try to get that, you know, pass, and you hire an attorney, and the attorney's gonna be like, yeah, it didn't say when you had to pay for it. Yeah, that's true. That's the problem. So you don't want to play around and play attorney. That's why attorneys' things are very long and very wordy and very intricate, because they have to think if so, when, and if what doesn't happen, and then this would happen by when. There's a lot of stuff you got to add in there. That's why you always want to use addendas. If there's anything that is anything having to do with FHA, VA, anything that has a homeowners association has to have an addenda, condominium, don't ever write an addenda yourself if there's one here. And if you ever need help, ask me, ask Tasha. We will help you with that. But I'm going to tell you, I've seen many of these things written, and it's a nightmare. And you can't get that supported, because I'm going to say that's way too vague. Good luck with that. There's nothing you can do. It has to be super hyper specific. And a lot of times I'll ask my friends who's an attorney to help me write them, because you got to think of those things, right? That is the important thing. So we went through the difference between the as-is and the FAR, and we went through the financing contingency, which I think was amazing. We covered that in that amount of time. Oh my gosh. How do you guys feel? Mind blown?
Good.
Exhausted?
No, I'm educated.
Questions?
I have a question, Carrie, about next week. My son is getting married, and I'm going to be en route to next Friday afternoon. I may be able to dial in via my phone, but I'll be going down 75, so I don't know what my connectivity will be like.
Yeah, let's see what next week even looks like. What is next week? Oh, no. Okay, well, let me take a quick little peek and see what's on the agenda for next week. Next week, we're going to do, you're in contract now, what? Timelines, inspections, lenders, surveys, appraisals. So it would be a good one, just for listening. I don't think it'd be anything necessarily that you have to see. So what about you, Melissa? What do you have for next week?
I can do the Zoom. I'm just having my dog fixed.
Oh.
Yeah.
So, do you think you could try to call in and listen?
Yeah, definitely I can do that. Yeah.
Okay, yeah, I think that would be a good one because we're not going to be like needing to read things like that. We're going to be more talking about scenarios, things that have happened, things that could happen, things to look out for, things like that.
Okay, yeah, cool. That's definitely, yeah, I can listen.
Yeah, and I never have to make stuff up because like today, like these things just walk through my door. I don't even, it's all day long. So any other thoughts or questions? Everybody good? Tasha, you want to share anything?
How excited I am that you guys are going to be writing contracts soon. So
Yes.
I need to know when, because I have buyers coming out my ears.
Well, I think they're ready to go. I mean, they're going to need some help the first couple times, which is no problem. You or I can walk them through. What I really want you guys to do as homework is write a contract for somebody. Just write a contract, and then, we can have Michael or Tasha go through it with you and just really, but I want you to think through, I'm representing a buyer and what would I fill in all these blanks, right? And you can
Carrie, I wasn't here for it, but just because contracts have changed, both when Melissa bought a house, even I think when Karen bought, and today I just fought a lender for a customer in the financing contingency. The contingency is not just give me a commitment letter at that end of that date. If it's 30 days, it is clear to close. I don't care if we're closing in 2 more months or 3 more months. I just fought a management level team at Better Homes and more, they want to act like they're an attorney.
Of course.
Because they won't give me the clear to close. They said, we're not closing for another month. I said, oh, well, who's going to give her money for her escrow if I don't get that?
Exactly.
Just want you to know how important that is. Like, it's no conditions, nothing at all.
That's what we were talking about, guys, how they've added in the appraisal. And so it's not with conditions. It is loan approval. You're either approved or you're not approved. And once that contingency is waived, it's waived. So if your buyer does not close, they lose their deposit.
Yes, it's a big deal. For any price point, anybody,
unless the buyer doesn't care about the deposit, but I can't imagine that being the case for most people. Most people care about that deposit. So
and the lenders lie. They just don't get it, because they told the buyer she had to put me in on 3-way because they're like, you're fine. You're not closing till the end of the month. No.
Well, Tasha, I shared that just today, we had this lender who's an idiot, who actually we're closing on Tuesday, today sent an email to the buyer, to the agent, our listing agent, to our buyer's agent, and to the freaking listing agent that the buyer has loan approval, waiving the financing contingency. By the way, we've not seen anything. There's no closing documents, so we don't even know it's without conditions. But they've already waived the financing contingency. You can't go back on that. You can't take that back. So if they don't close, who loses the deposit? The buyer. Yep.
This is her again, so I gotta go. But just
well,
wanted to make that point.
I'm gonna go pick up my son from the airport. But great to see everybody, and have a wonderful week and practice your contracts. So just go learn a contract. Again, Play with both of them. I think you will be using a lot of as is, I'm sorry to say, because I definitely I mean, what do you guys think? You've seen both. Do you see the benefits? I mean, there are benefits. Honestly, if you're putting in an offer on a home with an old roof, you know that roof life is not considered working condition. So if I were actually representing a buyer putting in an offer, I would use an as is on an old roof, because I know that that is not something that would come up as working condition, right? So I know that I would have more out for my buyer in an as is than I would in a regular traditional FAR bar, right? That is definitely true, especially with insurance being what it is. That is a real issue. So, but other than that, I mean, there are so many more benefits, in my opinion, to that residential contract, because you're pre-negotiating a lot of things. You're communicating so much ahead. Whereas that FAR bar, I mean, that as is just, it's a spit and a handshake if you ask me, but you know, who am I to say? Any thoughts, any questions?
I'm good.
All right, well, what was that, Melissa? You're on mute again.
I said, no, I'm going to go write some contracts and practice.
Excellent, because then you want to be writing them for real. I love it.
I know, I'm ready.
Have a great rest of your day, guys, and a great weekend.
You too. Have fun with your son.
Thank you. Bye.
Bye.